Jess, and welcome to the virtual Remembrance Day Assembly. Remembrance Day is a memorial day that was created in order to honor those who fought and died in battle while serving for their country. Canada takes time every year to honor those who made sacrifices in order for all of us to be here today. Remembrance Day has its origins in World War I. On November 11, 1918 at 11 a.m., the Armistice Agreement was passed, ending the First World War. World War I lasted for 4 years, and approximately 650,000 Canadian men and women served to defend their country. Pause and remember the sacrifices that were made. World War I was brutal, and approximately 61,000 Canadian soldiers died in battle, along with millions of others all throughout Europe. Since then, many countries all around the world have marked November 11th as a day to pause and remember.
2020 marks a rare occasion in history as we mark the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, the most devastating war in history. Today, on this landmark anniversary, we must remember and recognize all the sacrifices made during that horrific war. It is estimated that there were about 50 million deaths in total. When deaths are grouped into such large statistics, they can often feel overwhelming and can sometimes lose the recognition they need. So please take a moment to consider that statistic. That's about 50 million people who never got to live their lives in the way that they deserved. Maybe the chance to witness one of their children was stolen from them, or maybe even the opportunity to grow up themselves was robbed of them. Whatever the case may have been, each one of those deaths was the end of a human life that had value and meaning. The 75th anniversary of World War II's end also marks the 75th anniversary of one of humankind's grimmest events, the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, the Nazis targeted various groups of people who they deemed to be inferior. These groups include, but are not limited to, members of the LGBTQ+ community, differently abled people, and Polish civilians. Though Nazis targeted many groups of people, they particularly focused on the killing of Jewish people. By the end of the war, they took over 6 million Jewish lives. In between the start of the war and the end of the war, the Nazis took somewhere between 11 and 17.5 million people's lives. The Allied soldiers who died did so to bring an end to that sadistic persecution. These soldiers, that include many Canadians, suffered because they understood the true cost of freedom. They sacrificed everything they had so that they could ensure that we would live in a world without the fear of invasion or genocide. Oftentimes, civilians suffered just as much as soldiers when it comes to war. World War II was a tragedy that not only affected those fighting in it, but everyone around the world, as many civilians made consequential sacrifices. War is obviously catastrophic, with much of Europe being ravaged by destruction, as well as many other places around the world. Millions were forced to relocate, leaving behind their homes, their memories. In fact, up to as many as 35 million civilians didn't even get the chance to escape and lost their lives. On Remembrance Day, we must recall the civilians who were innocent yet impacted by these disastrous events. Canada's contribution to the Second World War was immense. It is estimated that approximately 38,000 Canadians lost their lives during the war. Those 38,000 were not fighting on their front doorstep, but were rather shipped overseas to help the noble cause, where they were dispersed throughout Europe and went to parts of Asia as well. In Italy, the Canadians fought the very well-entrenched Germans, and as a result, over a quarter of the Canadians became casualties. But perhaps one of Canada's greatest contributions came during the invasion of Normandy. On D-Day, the Allied soldiers sought to take 90 kilometers of beaches. The Canadians stormed Juno Beach and went farther than any other group that day. The success at Juno Beach was instrumental to the war effort, but came at a great cost. The success at Juno Beach cost 359 Canadian lives. There were also 715 people wounded and 47 people taken prisoner. These sacrifices were not forgotten and helped the Allied cause substantially. On this milestone anniversary, please recognize that the Second World War was a calamity that demanded unforgettable sacrifice from people all around the world. We will now be joined by Miss Jeff's drama class. They will begin by performing a choral reading of the poem Vimy Ridge, written by Sylvia Takima.
On Vimy Ridge, the oak trees stand, steadfast guards across the land, once desolate,
a battlefield,
the populous guard,
now whole and healed, its tragedy and triumph sealed.
100
years,
follies, fears,
deep loss,
great sacrifice,
and tears. Yet, in that soil of blood and sweat, turmoil time dares not forget. The acorns drop and hope takes hold.
will promise,
stubborn, bold, mighty hosts hanging still like fog and smoke. Last words they spoke. These weighted limits
With memory filled,
possess within
the strength to build bright futures.
on 1,000 hills.
set on courage, kindness,
Goodness. For a wild age and girth of hosts increase.
Still heart's duty does not cease.
Still heart's duty does not cease.
Remembrance Day looks a little different this year. Instead of coming together to pay our respects at ceremonies, or going to memorials, or even buying poppies at our local stores, we instead have to look at different ways to acknowledge our veterans. That's why this year the Brooklyn Heritage Society has decided to post the stories of our local soldiers digitally. You may have noticed the many banners that line our streets, featuring the photos of local men who served overseas. However, to do these men justice, we feel we need to tell some of their stories. That is why in the lead up to Remembrance Day, we will be using our Instagram page to bring you these stories. We asked the students of Brooklyn High to check out our stories on our social media accounts. We also asked that if you can share those stories with family and friends, it would be a great way to acknowledge the sacrifices made by a lot of the local soldiers in the area. If you're also interested in learning a little bit more about the history of Brooklyn, please follow our various social media accounts, which will be listed at the end of the description. Thank you.
Flanders fields, sleep sweet, to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high, we keep the faith with all who died. Cherish too the poppy red that grows on fields where valor led.
It seems to signal to the skies.
But lends a luster to the red of the flower that blooms above the dead. Poppy red, we wear in honor of our dead.
Fear not. We will teach the lesson in Flanders fields.
Shortly, it will be time for the playing of the last post. Before we begin, it is essential that we acknowledge its meaning to this solemn occasion. The playing of the last post originated in the British Army centuries ago and was initially used to signal to soldiers that their day was complete and their duty fulfilled. Today, its use and significance has evolved to symbolize not the end of a day, but of a soldier's life on Earth and the end of their service to their country. Throughout the 20th century, as 2 world wars and many smaller conflicts claimed millions of lives, the notes were played around the world at not just military funerals, but at memorials and during moments of remembrance. We play this song to mourn our dead and honor our men and women who sacrificed their lives, their health, and well-being in the service of their country. When we hear it in just a few moments, please remember to remain silent, and we ask that you honor the courage, valor, and sacrifice of our heroes. Now, please rise if you are able to do so, for the playing of the last post and a moment of silence. And with that, our Remembrance Day ceremony of 2020 draws to a close. On behalf of everybody who participated in this year's assembly, we hope that you will do your part in keeping the faith. Lest we forget, nous nous souviendrons.